And now Matt Atchity from Rotten Tomatoes joins us. Matt, great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we want to talk about Inglourious Basterds. We want to talk about District 9 because everybody's talking about those, including us. And there's a lot to talk about there. But real quick, now you got some movies coming out that they didn't show critics, you're telling me.
Right.
What are they? Which ones are coming?
Halloween 2. This is Rob Zombie's sequel to his Halloween reboot.
Right. So I love it that it's Halloween 2 because it is Halloween what? In reality.
Right. I think at this one it's 8 or 9.
Yeah. But it's
no, I know. When I saw the trailer for it, I was like, Halloween 2, how? Right? I didn't know 2. Okay.
Well, that's the thing that we've been talking about at the office. It's, we see a bunch of sequels and a bunch of remakes, and now it's a remake of a sequel.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's true. That's true. And, I don't know, Ben, as a guy who did this on a regular basis, how do you put up with all the horror movies? I mean, they all seem to be the same, and there's so many of them. Like, I watched the trailer, and I thought Halloween 2 looked a little scary, right? But aren't they all the same? Aren't they all a little scary and incredibly similar?
No, I mean, yes and no. I mean, yeah, they are incredibly similar, but, there are degrees to which when it's, look, when it's well done, it's well done. And you can't be a serious film critic in any way if you just decide you hate a genre. Like, I hate, Now, that said, I know.
Now, my advantage is I don't need to be a serious film critic.
And I'm comfortable, in being honest that, odds are, if left to my own devices, and this is I don't know whether it's true with you, Matt, I wouldn't see most of those horror movies if I didn't have to.
That happens with me, too. I tend to not gravitate towards horror movies. It's not my thing. That being said, I'm a fan of Sam Raimi's. His Evil Dead series is great. And
I liked Drag Me to Hell.
Drag Me to Hell was great.
Yeah.
I think what happens with a lot of horror movies is that it's an easy way for people to break into the business and have a really quick impact because there's a guaranteed audience, and you can make them cheap. You can make them really cheap. You don't need any big name talent. You just find some pretty looking people and slash them up, and that's it.
Right.
Like, it's kind of formulaic. And so if you've got any shred of talent, you can get those done, and somebody hopefully at Hollywood sees, oh, there's a spark there with Eli Roth, or maybe there's something we can expand on. And
and besides which, your main actor is behind a mask, so that doesn't cost much either.
For example, I mean, I really liked Orphan. I liked it a lot.
Oh, that's funny. I was going to mention that because I was like, if I'd see one horror movie, it'd probably be something at least a little different, like Orphan. I remember when I was a kid, they made the mistake of bringing me to Omen, right?
Right.
And man, that stuck with me. That spooked me out for a long time. And Orphan kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
You didn't see it,
but I haven't seen it yet.
I thought it was great. I mean, I don't know what you thought. A lot of people did not like it, and I mean, there's a movie. That was a movie where there was legitimate debate among people, especially among like a lot of people who I normally found myself agreeing with. Didn't like Orphan, and then some people also loved it. I certainly wasn't alone. What did you think of Orphan?
I thought it was all right. I'll tell you, this is an example. We were talking about this before about seeing too much about a movie and.
I saw nothing about it.
Nothing. I'd heard about it. I'd heard, somebody had spoiled what it was for me. And the only thing I could think of the whole time through the whole movie was "Don't Look Now." Was the old Sutherland movie.
Yep.
And I kept thinking, and which is completely unfair to the movie. But I couldn't help but compare that. And so it took me out of the film.
Don't tell me what happens.
I didn't know anything about it, and so I knew what genre it was. I knew what we were talking about. My mom's big complaint about at the movie show when Ben Lyons and I were doing it was that we both used mainly Ben Lyons, but we used the word genre too much. So I'm going to back away from that. That was her biggest complaint. I saw the show. Too much genre.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Yeah.
She always has those constructive comments.
And you don't look comfortable in your seat. Why don't you smile more? Why are you turned that way?
Sit up straight.
Right. Why don't they give you a chair that's
Brush your
comfortable?
hair.
What's wrong with them? So I knew nothing, and I thought again, what we've done is that this is a particularly inventive way to tell this story. But again, if I'd known the twist, if I'd known what was coming, certainly it would have taken me out of it. And that's also, by the way, unlike most horror movies where they would not make the choice to put a couple of no-name actors there. And I think that made a huge difference that we had two real performers. We had two established professional actors in the leads in Vera Farmiga and Peter Sarsgaard.
Real quick, tomato meter on Orphan. Now I'm totally curious.
It was rotten. I can't remember the score off the top of my head, but it was a low score.
Oh, it was lower than 60.
It was lower than 60.
Oh,
Really?
okay.
Oh, I'm surprised by that.
And but for Halloween 2 and the other, we don't have.
We don't have tomato meters. Not that I want to skew how it's going to go, but chances are there's going to end up being rotten.
Because if they don't show it to the critics, that means they think it's.
Well, the general consensus, the conventional wisdom is that nobody screens a movie. You don't not screen a movie that you're confident in, right? If you think the critics are going to like it, then you get it out there. But with horror movies, the assumption for right or for wrong is, for the most part, they know that the critics aren't going to like it, and so the studios don't hold screenings because they figure that the audience, the teens and the younger audience that likes horror movies, and the guys that are, really into that genre, sorry, Ben, will go see it regardless of what the critics say.
Yeah,
it's more about how gory is it. Are there good kills? Do you see lots of gore? Is Tom Savini doing the makeup? Then we're there.
Yeah, I don't. No offense to Ebert. I think he's a great movie reviewer, but I don't see like 17-year-olds picking up Ebert's review and being like, "Oh, okay, let me see if I should see Halloween 2 or not." Right. So I can see why they disregard the critics. All right. So now let's move on to
real quick. Orphan at 56 and 42 in the top critics, but then like two of the people who I sort of grew to respect most just from reading them, Ty Burr from the Boston Globe, Mick LaSalle from San Francisco Chronicle, sort of felt almost exactly as I did. That they just found it too much fun. This was too entertaining and too sort of joyful and scary, and it's sort of peculiarly joyful, but you have a great time.
All right, so District 9. Everybody's buzzing about District 9. We talked about Inglourious Basterds on the show before, and people said, "Oh, you should see District 9." So I'm always curious about the tomato meter. Let's start there.
High 80s.
Yeah.
High 80s. So
I think last I looked, it was about 89.
Okay, so
still got
critics
a couple
love
of reviews.
it.
Yeah, still got a couple of reviews trickling in from Australia and the UK as it's getting a wider release there. But its last I looked was a couple days ago. I think it was about 88, 89.
Okay, so the critics are really liking it.
Most of the critics are really liking it.
Did you see it, Matt?
89.
I did see it. Yes.
And what did you think?
I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. It was, this is again one that I had somewhat expectations of. I had seen Blomkamp's short film Alive in Joburg. Which I had sought out when they had announced he was going to do the Halo adaptation. So I remember seeing that, 2 years ago, I think, when they were talking about that. And I had kind of at the time thought, wow, they're going to expand that into a whole feature, and it's a little late to do the allegory of apartheid, and it's not like that at all. It's an action movie.
The word apartheid is not used in District 9.
Right. And so since everybody's buzzing about it, and Peter Jackson is producing it, and I respect him, and so I respect the story. So I'm almost certainly going to see it. You liked it too, Ben?
I liked it a lot, and again, certainly it would come in ranked above horror, but I don't, I don't get excited initially about science fiction. I'm not like, oh, there's this great new sci-fi movie, I got to see it. But when science fiction is a line I've used for a long time, and it's sort of meaningless, but when sci-fi is good, it's often great. And when it's bad, it's frequently unwatchable. There's a lot.
That's a really good point.
And it's mostly, and it's usually, to me, much more likely to not be good. But when they get it right, it's gripping.
Well, and what's great about District 9 is that it's the classic sense of science fiction, in that it takes a speculative world to tell what's a very human story that people would maybe miss if they were telling it without aliens in the mix, as opposed to something like, say, Star Wars, where really it's just an adventure story where they've got laser swords and ray guns.
Right. This latest. Oh, Star Wars. Yes, absolutely. That's right. So now let's do Inglourious Basterds. Okay. Now, we talked about it on the show before. I loved it. Wendy hated it. Just different perspective on it. First off, just real quick, you liked it. Did you love it?
Very much. I mean, I would give it, if we had stars, and that's the way I thought, we did the see it, skip it, rent it, I would always think of things in stars first. And to me, I think it solidly was 3, and I could have been talked into 3.5. I felt really good coming out of it. I had a blast. It's long, and it was one of the few long movies where I never, for a moment, felt like it was dragging.
Matt, liked it or loved it?
I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say that it's his best film, but it's one of his better movies, and it's definitely worth seeing.
And I thought, he's back. Okay, like it's been a long time where I just didn't love his movies, but this was Pulp Fiction-esque. This reminded me of the old Quentin Tarantino. All right, so now let's get on to what I really want to discuss. I was telling Ben during the break that Wendy, my wife, likes movies with a point, right? And she didn't see the point of this, and that it wasn't very substantive. But you made a great point. Now, what do you think the substantive points that are being made?
Well, I think there were a lot of substantive points in it, but I think that there was. I mean, look, we talk a lot about fighting terrorism. Of course, now we've learned the Obama administration may finally have called that off because it's like it's like fighting trench warfare. It's a tactic. It's not a thing. You can't fight it. It is a tactic in battle.
That's right.
And a tactic that people generally hate, especially when it targets civilians. When it targets the military, it seems fairly genuine to me. But anyway, these guys, and without giving too much of the movie away, these guys, the Brad Pitt's guys, the Bastards, they're terrorists. The whole idea is they capture the Nazis, they kill them in battle, legitimate, then they scalp them to send a message back to literally terrify them. And they let some live to tell the stories. And when they're disarmed, they still kill them. And then there's a scene in the movie where people are locked in a room, and the building is set ablaze, and the doors are locked. So you're burning civilians in a building, and then from a top a part of the building, I'm trying so hard not to give anything away. From the top, they're killing the people inside, trying to get out of the fire.
And there are suicide bombers.
And they're suicide bombers.
Yeah.
That's terrorists. The Americans in this movie are terrorists. There's no way around it. Now, it's the Nazis who are the object of their terror. Is that the right thing to do? I don't know. It's an interesting conversation.
Now, there's also the flip side, Matt, the right-wing point here, where they portray it as torture works.
Well, I mean, they do, right?
Right.
And to Ben's point, the question is, since it's against the Nazis, is it okay, right? At what point does the villain or the victim, I almost hate to use that word in reference to Nazis, but at what point does the victim of terrorism be
justify
is it acceptable?
the tactic?
Right, exactly. I mean, it starts to ask the question, in this particular case, do the ends justify the means?
And what I loved about this movie was that Tarantino didn't pull punches. He wasn't concerned what are people going to say.
Right.
He just made a movie.
He didn't care.
Yeah, and he said, "Look, let's have an interesting conversation about it if you want to.
Right.
I'm going to do this fantasy, right, of how World War II could have gone, right? And I'm going to put all these literally incendiary things in it, and see how you like it.
Yeah,
isn't that what a movie's supposed to be?
That's one thing that a movie is supposed to be, certainly, and I think, and it totally worked for me. I was thinking the whole movie. I was like, oh my God, these are unquestionably terrorists.
Yeah, and what triggered it for me was the suicide bomber.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and I was like, wow, and it's, and did they flip it on its head?
Yeah.
So the more I think about it,
and by the way, some of the Nazis killed. I mean, we're easy to do Nazis, but like some of that first scenes where they're killing and scalping the Nazis, look, those are German soldiers. I mean, they're not members of the Gestapo.
Right. When we did the last review on YouTube, and people said that, they said, look, you got to make a distinction between Nazis and German soldiers, which is a very fair point. But I don't think Tarantino is saying this is okay.
No.
I think Tarantino's making a movie,
totally,
and says, okay, now you do with it what you like, but it's a fantasy movie.
Well, it is a fantasy, right? Like he's playing with the expectations that you have, right? It's the typical movie history is that the Nazis are bad and they're the villains, and so pretty much it's okay to take them out, and anyone that's fighting the Nazis is a hero. And then now he takes, among other things where he, surprises you, which I won't give away the big surprise, but
there are a ton of surprises.
There are a bunch of surprises. And, one of the things he does is he takes these characters where, he makes them into terrorists, and he makes them these really, you start watching, you're thinking, wow, these are Americans?
Am I supposed to like? Whose side am I on? What am I? I know I'm not on the Nazi side, but who am I?
No, well, I'll go further though. I mean, it's also a great visceral movie. Like I had no qualms about rooting for the Americans, and I'm against torture. And what they did was clearly torture, clearly against the Geneva Conventions, et cetera, right? And there I was thinking, go get them,
no,
right?
Totally,
it was a sense of justice. Now, and I don't agree with that. It's a philosophy. I don't think that's not how we did it, and that's not how we won. And did we won by being smarter than that? Okay, but at the same time, there's something viscerally appealing about doing it that way.
And you almost wonder if is that the subversive point that he's trying to make, or does he even mean to make that point? Whereas, everybody will agree that torture and terrorism is wrong, but here he comes a movie where he's got guys doing that, and you're rooting for him. And so, you come out of that, and if you're thinking about it, like, what? Did I really just
Right.
be
No,
rooting
it's
for
over.
these guys?
No, it's over. The more we talk about it,
Right.
the more I love the movie.
I knew the more I talked about it, the more I was going to love the movie.
And you know what? I'm going to see it again. I almost never see a movie twice, and I'm going to see that again. And plus, on top of all this, what I loved the most was the characters. I mean, Brad Pitt was phenomenal.
Yeah,
Aldo the Apache and his accent, I loved it. Colonel Landa.
Christopher Waltz, I thought, stole the movie.
Yeah, totally.
I thought it was great.
The Jew Hunter. I mean, come on.
So good. I mean, a guy terrifying in Italian, French, German, and English. Scary in every language. You fear what he's not saying in every language.
And Tarantino has a way of like when they have the bear Jew with the bat in the tunnel. I mean, he has a way of really ripping into your guts. Like you're like, oh no, the bear Jew's going to come out, and you're rooting for it, and you're not rooting for it, and that's when I said this is a great movie.
Well, it's like it's like this. I mean, it's almost like a literal bear coming out of a cave. Right?
Yeah,
it's like, oh no,
right. It's the same as the Gimp in Pulp Fiction.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That moment of like he's reached into your guts, right? And then he also has a way of giving them great names like Hugo Stiglitz. I don't know why, but you love Hugo Stiglitz as a name, as a character, and of course that harkens back to Reservoir Dogs. So he really nailed it on this one.
You didn't say it real quick. I know we got to wrap it up. You said it's not his best. So what is his best?
I would have to say I personally think Pulp Fiction is his best.
Yeah, look, I don't want to be cute about it. I think Pulp Fiction is top 20 movie of all time. So, for me.
I love Pulp Fiction. I love Reservoir Dogs because it's one of the few movies that shows pain. Movies show violence. Few show pain. I think that really it stands out for me. Hell is for Heroes, a Don Siegel movie from 1962. One of the few movies I reacted to the same way, showing pain. I don't want to be cute, and I mean it. I just saw it again, and I know I'm alone. Not alone, but in a minority. But it's still Jackie Brown.
Yeah, I got to go back and watch that because somebody else made that point, and I didn't love Jackie Brown the first time I watched it, so I got to watch it again.
See, I love Jackie Brown. I think the thing is, I'm probably being unfair when I say I don't think it's his best because with all of his movies, it's a matter of degrees. I don't think he's got a bad one in the bunch.
Right, neither do I.
All right.
But a lot of talking in Jackie Brown, but I love talking. A lot of talking in Inglourious Basterds for a World War II movie that's awfully violent. A lot of talking. But
I'm glad you brought that final point. The dialogue is what puts it over the top.
Right.
I mean, he's just got probably the best dialogue in the business as far as fun, funny, action, interesting, etc. So, I mean,
he knows how people talk, and that's why Jackie Brown works combining it from an adaptation of Rum Punch and Elmore Leonard book. Elmore Leonard knows how people talk.
Right.
Put them together with Quentin Tarantino, and you're left with a movie where I like to hear what people say.
All right. Ben Mankiewicz, Matt Atchity from Rotten Tomatoes, thanks for coming in as usual.
Thanks for having me.